what would have been Blair Mayne's 111th birthday. So behind us then, in front of you guys, is Blair Mayne's family resting place, the main plot here. And you can see it mentions the fourth line down, the local house where the Maynes lived. And we'll be joined today by an enthusiast in the subject, Forbesy here. And Forbesy, as I use the term loosely, worked in the town here of ours for a number of years previously, and lives very locally. And he's turned himself then into an enthusiast, as I say, and gives Blair Mayne, excellent Blair Mayne talks. My notes have been on a few of them. I've told really a few of even stayed awake during them all. And it also gives excellent tours of a number of locations here in the town of ours, which were of relevance to young Blair. I suppose you could argue that Blair was always young because he died aged only 40. It's funny how your definition of middle age changes as we get older. So Forgy and I are both wearing very middle-aged hats, I remarked earlier, but because we are middle-aged. So we're going to rattle through Blair's life with Forgy here. And this is an interesting place. Moving cemeteries, lots of interesting people buried here. Most of it, without a doubt, is this one we're standing at, final resting place of the Mayne family, especially Robert Blair Mayne. So this is going out at McCabe's Memorable Memorials, my YouTube channel. I'm Peter McCabe. So if you haven't already liked the channel, please do so. It's free, and we don't put hard with videos. We only put one up a week usually. Before the most popular of the videos, a couple of hundred videos that we've put up to date. When I say we, have to thank Justin for his expertise, for coming up with the concept for up today. I don't know whether to thank him or blame him, but for also doing all the hard work behind the scenes for the YouTube channel. So again, please consider clicking and liking the videos and subscribing to the channel for free. So Forbesy, there's a number of interesting people that buried in this cemetery, as I say, but it's certainly worth giving special mention to a man called Billy Hull, who we'll perhaps mention later on in the talk. So thanks very much for coming along today on a drafty January afternoon. I'm sure you could think of a million and one other things to do than stand here and the threatening rain, and not long after a weather warning as well. So we'll run through chronologically then and say we're here on what would have been Blair Mayne's 111th birthday. So he was born here in the town of ours, but I mentioned Mount Pleasant, the main family home. He wasn't actually born at Mount Pleasant, sure he wasn't.
No, and he was born, now his birth was registered in Mount Pleasant, but he was actually born in their townhouse in Newtonards. And the family owned two houses. The main sort of townhouse, which was beside their business, and High Street in Newtonards.
They were
grocers. Just general store really. They also had an off license right the corner of Brilliance Street. But they owned a very large house, a large sprawling country home called Mount Pleasant. We know that through the family that Blair wasn't born in Mount Pleasant because his younger brother Douglas said he was the only Mayne born in Mount Pleasant. So Blair must have been born in the townhouse, but they registered his birth in Mount Pleasant because it's a
more
salubrious address, really. So yes, a lot of Blair's life centered around the square of Newtonards, his early life especially. Yes, he went to primary school.
A primary school for girls.
No, the school was a private primary school, Old Sam, called Miss Brown School for Girls. Yes, that was the name of it. But Miss Brown was very important in the setting up of Regent House School. So it was a private education that he got and his whole family got. And it's due to the proximity to their townhouse. Blair thoroughly enjoyed his time there. There was a scene of absolute mischief in that man, because at the age of about 8, Miss Brown's was currently, or is where Cafe Nero is in the square in Newton Ards, and hers was above Cafe Nero. Now, a couple of doors up is the what used to be the Bank of Ireland. It's now a pizza restaurant. But when Blair attended Miss Brown's school, he had the mischievous streak showed through because he planned to climb out of Miss Brown's window, walk along the roof, and break into the bank at about 8 years of age.
So the younger people won't know what a bank is, but it used to be where they kept money.
Yes,
back in the good old bad old days.
Money is that it's a sort of cereal that they can pass around to people.
It's like an old fashioned credit card thing.
Yes, you'll see it in the museum. All right.
So he was fifth in the sixth, right? The penultimate
Six
child.
out of seven.
6 out of 7.
Yep.
And
his elder brother, or eldest brother, is buried here.
He died out in Pleasantville. Sadly,
at 35. Yeah. He had a number of sisters and a number of older brothers. He was. He wouldn't have been the golden boy of the family. That particular thing went to his younger brother, Douglas. Certainly, by war's end, certainly one of my family were probably proudest of. Although his elder sister, Francie, was the first female major in the army, worth mentioning.
No, definitely a remarkable lady evidence like that. So then after Miss Brown's school, then he went to Regent.
Yes, Regent House is just round. The original Regent House is just round in the morning. Beside the bus station, and also beside the Masonic Lodge where Blair attended later on in his life.
And Masonic, Blair's Masonic connections we'll mention briefly those later on. That key role and sadly the night of his death.
Yeah. So Regent House was still standing. It's a lovely big Georgian building. It's currently on the market for 1.2 million. If anybody would like to buy it, we move a museum in there if you wish. But it has a fantastic cafe in it. And when I do my Blair tour, I like to take people to the cafe because you're sitting in Blair's class, where he was educated, and you can slide down the banister that he slid down when he was, and it's just fantastic. Or take the lift if you wish. Yeah. Hopefully I'll be going and having coffee with a lady who went to that school over the next week or two.
Cool. Well, you obviously enjoy what you do, which is you've met some very, very interesting people, certainly. You've spoken at a number of different venues. But of course, you've spoken at a couple of times over in Scotland. You've a number of occasions locally, including a very successful talk with your good friend. I would suggest Damien Lewis here in the Queen's Hall in Ards last year. This has to be a career highlight. Standing near the drafty graveyard. Talking about Blair.
I was over in Chelmsford at Highland House. We'll talk about Highland House later on, but for the 80th anniversary of the disbandment of the SAS. And while I didn't do a talk there, much to everybody's satisfaction, I performed two songs which mean an awful lot to Blair. And one of them is his version of Lily Marlene, and the other was Mush, 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 Don't Tread on the Tail of My Coat, which everybody will know until they don't realise that they don't. But I'll just not start singing it.
No, I've seen the video for that, and it was memorable, let's say, for all the right reasons.
Absolutely.
So after then his education here in the town of Ards, and he went up like we did, up to the Big Smoke, up to Queen's University, and he studied law up there. But I'm more interested in his sporting exploits when he was up there at Queen's. He was. People know that perhaps that he was a successful rugby player, but they don't actually realise that he was a boxer. So maybe you could talk briefly just about his boxing. Certainly his introduction to boxing was interesting, and the rugby career.
Yes, as you say, a very interesting introduction to boxing. He thought he would try it out. Being 6'2.5", 6'3" in his stock and soles, he was a formidable lump of a man.
A big unit,
as we say, and and very strong as well, proper strength. Yes, he tried out the boxing. Now, the coach at the time sort of took one look at him, this big drip of a man, and thought, sure, come on up here and we'll do a bit of sparring. Yes, I'm while sparring with the coach, Blair knocked the coach out.
Okay.
At what stage the coach realised that, yes, he was onto something here and there was a potential for a good future in boxing. And Blair went on to be under 21's Irish University's boxing champion. For a guy who'd never tried the sport, pretty darn good.
Yeah. And then the rugby's a bit better known, perhaps than the boxing. He played for his local team Ards here, and then played for Ulster on not that many occasions, and he played for Ireland on not that many occasions. Before he was obviously the British Lions selectors spotted his talent, his raw talent, and then selected him for the tour of South Africa as part of the British Lions. What year was that?
1938.
Okay.
It's the notorious 1938 tour
And
of South Africa.
his exploits assured
notoriety. Yeah, very much so. No, Blair started off at playing rugby at Regent and worked his way up. He played for Ards. He was captain of Ards at age 18, which is some feat for a young fella. He then went on. I played for Malone as well. Played for Ulster. And we played for Queens alongside some of his best friends. One of them's the Reverend George Cromie. He wasn't the Reverend George Cromie at the time, but and then yes, progressed on to Ulster, Ireland, and then into the British Lions for the notorious 1938 tour of South Africa.
So you could probably give a talk on the 38th tour of South Africa and say
his exploits,
his supply of fresh meat, etc.
Yes,
the fact that he kind of knocked a few South Africans out on the pitch as this payback for was it fouls on George Cromie?
No, it was fouls on Sammy Walker, the captain, who was a Belfast man.
Okay.
Also, and yeah.
So yes, but as a lot of people don't realize he was a good boxer, very successful rugby player. A lot of people also don't realize that he was a successful solicitor.
Yes.
So he studied law at Queen's, as we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and was starting off his law career as a solicitor. But then the war intervened. That changed everything, and for him, so he never resumed certainly the sporting activity post-war. We'll talk about later about why. Danny, so I'm going to mention just what Blair Mayne's best known for, but maybe others have talked in more detail about what Blair Mayne is best known for his war and exploits. So I'm going to ask you maybe this is going to start just to maybe mention a couple of names or a couple of things. I'm going to mention the name Ian McGonigal to you, and then Operation Squatter as well. So Ian McGonigal is often referred to as Owen McGonigal, but so maybe you said a few words.
The family called him Ian. He called himself Ian. It doesn't take much research to find that out. But yes, Blair was introduced to Ian by Ian's brother Ambrose McGonigal, who attended Queen's University for a short time at the same time that Blair was there. They got to know each other, and Ambrose said, "You should meet my brother because he's a big rugby boy as well." And the two of them sort of just struck it off straight away. And it was actually Ian who, now they went through 11 Scottish Commando together. And it was Ian who joined the SAS when the Commandos were splitting up. Blair was heading over to the Far East, or wanting to head over to the Far East. But Ian persuaded him to try out for this SAS. He had spoken to Sterling and said to Sterling, "You really need to talk to this man, Blair Mayne." And that's really where the
friendship started.
The early days of the SAS started.
So certainly Ian McGonigal's premature death had a profound effect on his good friend Blair. Maybe just talk briefly about his premature death and Blair Mayne's sadly fruitless quest to find Ian's deliberate mistake.
Yeah. It all started with the very first operation that the SAS attempted, was called Operation Squatter. And basically the whole group of them got on the 5 planes, bar one who was left behind because he had hurt himself in parachute training, which was somewhat expected, really, when he saw what they did. But they all went off,
Yes,
5
the
planes.
training was primitive.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah, absolutely. So they at the start of Squatter, they headed off. The 5 planes flew into a desert storm, which had devastating effect on the operation. Instead of them jumping out into nice, easy conditions to parachute in, these guys jumped out into a raging storm. There were boys killed, blown all over, off course, and all over the place. So um, one of the sticks that went missing was, or rather was captured, was Ian McGonagall's stick, being about 11 or 12 of the SAS guys, one of the planes, basically. So McGonagall's stick were either all captured or killed, as in the case of Ian McGonagall. Blair didn't find out until later on in the war what happened to McGonagall, but after Squatter, he went out anyway looking for any trace of Ian, but never found it.
Because he was unaware, sadly, that at
Yeah.
that stage
Yeah.
his beloved friend Ian had been killed.
Yeah.
So just again, SAS, Blair's time as a founding member of the SAS is well documented, and
Very much so.
certainly a major part of your fantastic talk. But I'll just actually mention, I'll just say 2 things again. I'll just actually to mention CR40, not a compass. So maybe you talk briefly just about it.
Yeah, on one of the raids at the very start, when they had decided to give up parachuting, were being delivered by the Long Range Desert Group, they were on an airfield. They had to make sure that every single aircraft was destroyed. They had what are called Lewis bombs, named after Jock Lewis, who was one of the founder members.
Scottish?
No, actually.
really?
Yeah, from the Antipodes.
Okay.
Came over to work with the Oxford rowing team, which is the Oxford and Cambridge bit has a bearing in the SAS parachute badge that they use. It's got a dark blue and a light blue. Dark blue from Oxford, and the light blue, and that's Jock Lewis, and the light blue from Cambridge, which of course was David Stirling's. Anyway, so yes, they on the airfield, they planted bombs on all of the planes, bar one plane. And Blair knew immediately that if that plane was left standing, that plane would be chasing him and his men out through the desert. So he had to put it out of operation, and he did it by ripping the control panel out with his bare hands.
As you do.
Now, he didn't just do that. He didn't do it just to put it out of operation. He wanted to get sandwich on the compass to see if they could adapt the compass to work on a Jeep, because you can't use a magnetic compass in the desert. So you have to use what they had developed, or the LRDG, the Long Range Desert Group, had developed the Bagnall Sun compass. So they were attempting to see if they had that, they could adapt the CR42 compass, and it exists to this day. It was taken home by one of the SAS guys, a gentleman Jim Ammons, and English, and it was in the Imperial War Museum for a while, so it's in the hands of a fellow gentleman Jim's family.
Good.
What's a very kind of.
I suppose, I said about Jock Lewis being Scottish, and I suppose there's a connection with Blair Mayne there.
Except he wasn't.
Exactly. In terms of his nickname. So he's known as Paddy Mayne, but Paddy wasn't actually, Patrick or Paddy wasn't his actual name. It's actually it's a bit of a stereotype, just for he's from Ireland, so he must be Paddy. So that's perhaps why you don't use the
No, I tend to go with the way the family talk about him, and they talk about Blair. A lot of people call him Paddy through various channels that they've learned this. But Jay Fraser McCluskey was the padre to the SAS towards the end of the war in France. Actually made a comment that he said only a few people told him Paddy. and his men called him Paddy all the time, but never to his face. You wouldn't want to do that. Yeah.
So again, his exploits to get 4 DSOs are well documented, and there's an ongoing debate to try to get news. Was it cited? Is that the correct expression for a Victoria Cross of BC? But it never came to pass. There's a campaign now. The 4 DSOs. Just a couple of things to mention from that time. So his time with Billy Hull, who I mentioned earlier, and also the events at Highlands House as well. So just briefly, if you could mention Billy and Highlands.
Yeah, if we start off with Billy was an Ulsterman.
Very not far from here.
Yes, very just a couple of 100 yards away from us. And he met Blair towards the end of the war. Billy was about 44, I think. Blair heard Billy's accent. The thing about Blair was he liked anything to do with Ireland. You got to remember, he was born an Irishman and he became an Ulsterman and partition in 21. But he
could argue he was always an Ulsterman.
Always an Ulsterman as well. Yes, absolutely. But he loved anything from home, anything that reminded him of home, and that included hearing an Ulster accent, a Belfast accent.
There's similarities to C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis always sought out people with Ulster accents.
Brilliant, excellent. So when he heard Billy Hull, he basically went over to Billy and said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Ulster." And he said, "Well, you're my driver from now on." And the two of them got involved with such escapades, and German occupied France and all through Norway and towards the end of the war. So Billy was a very, very important man to Blair, because even after the war, Billy ended up getting a house through Blair.
In Ard,
just down the road from where we're standing. Yeah, he was Donegal Road man initially, and then he got a house in Ardmore Crescent, which is just down from the cemetery here. And it was one of Blair's houses. He wrote to Blair when Blair was heading down to Antarctica, and said, "Any chance I could, get a house in Ard to bring up my family?" And Blair wrote back and said, "I do have one house, but there's a bit of a ne'er-do-well living in the house. Leave it with me."
Okay.
And then about a week later,
the property is now vacant.
Billy got the nod. Bring your wife. And Billy brought his family up in Newton Ards.
Cool. Highlands House then?
Highlands House was where the SAS were billeted at the end of the war. They were given permission by Mrs. Hanbury, whose son was in the RAF and had been killed, and she said, "Yes, bring the SAS boys. It's in Chelmsford, lovely big fancy house, a bit like Mount Stewart we have over here." Blair thoroughly enjoyed his time there, and there was one particular example of the mischievousness. They were walking through the big stately home, and noticed that a couple of chaps were trying to drive a wee small sports car up the main staircase, and
not the main street, the main staircase.
Okay. Yes. And Blair was walking with a couple of Americans, apparently. And one of the Americans said, "I bet you couldn't get a Jeep up there." I'll not do the accent. And so, before he had finished the sentence, Blair was out the door and they could hear a Jeep starting up. So he then drove the Jeep most of the way up the stairs, but there's a very tight right-hander on the stairs. So instead of wrecking the house, Blair stopped the Jeep. And of course, the American, instead of just going, "That's a bit mad," said, "See, I told you." At which stage Blair called down some of the SAS guys who were all sort of hanging over the stairs and said, "Lift it." And they lifted it and carried it up to up the stairs.
Also, always the lady of the manor as such was trying to sleep.
Yes, she was trying to sleep. The noise woke Mrs. Hanbury, who
I can't imagine why.
Who came out to see her new decoration that was now sitting on her landing. And but fortunately, she had a very soft spot for our Blair, so she
was forgiving.
he was able to get her back to her room and calm her down. They had to then dismantle the Jeep to get it back down the next day. and you can imagine Highlands House is as proud as punch with their relationship and connection with Blair now. Maybe not so much at the time.
No, I don't think they would be exactly thrilled at the time.
We were, as I say, we were at in Chelmsford, the Highlands House for the 80th anniversary.
For the sing song.
Amazing to see that staircase.
Yeah.
And just to do a couple of songs.
Yeah, well, that features heavily in your talk, and again, I would urge people to Forbes is available for if you want them to go and talk out to different groups or whatever that you might belong to. So we've kind of mentioned the war there, but to say that's documented elsewhere. So post-war, I'm going to mention post-war. Immediately after post-war, after the end of the Second World War, or the SAS were disbanded, weren't they?
They were. Now there was a secret organization within the SAS, the Nazi hunters. But yes, Blair was out by then.
So he decided, where did he decide he would head then?
Well, he wasn't quite ready to settle into the sedentary life of being a solicitor in Newtownards. So he headed down with two of his men down to Antarctica, as you would, as part of the FIDS, the Falkland Island Dependency Survey.
Careful how you say that, yeah.
Absolutely. So, yes, he went down to Antarctica, and we know that he made it to Antarctica. We have a friend, Jeff Cooper, who's in the Antarctic Heritage Trust, and we showed him photographs of that Blair had taken and asked him where these photographs were, and he said they are in Antarctica. But unfortunately, he had developed an injury from parachuting at the start of the early days of the SAS, and his back and shoulders gave him an awful lot of grief. He realized he was going to be just a burden to them, really. So he then came back and left them to it. So, yeah.
So he returned to Ards here?
Sleepy wee Newtownards, yeah.
In his mid-30s at this stage?
He would have been, yeah.
And he started practicing law. Oh, he was working for the Law Society of Northern Ireland by that stage.
Yep, he was made secretary of the Law Society of Northern Ireland.
But you have a great photograph, Forbesy, of Blair at the age of only 34% in the school cup. Was that for Regent?
That was at Regent Sports Day, and that was to a man who would later become a minister, John Watson. When you look at the photograph, I often do this in my talk and ask people what age they think that
I just given the clue away.
Is. Yeah, and nobody manages, but everybody now will put their hand up for. Oh no, don't worry, we're done. For 34 years of age, but yeah, most people think it's a man in his 50s, late 50s, early 60s.
He was a kind of physically, he was very badly affected by the war, wasn't he? Because of the exploits and what he had to do there.
It's getting a bit worse. So
it's just a little bit wet. So on the for any Ards football supporters, you might be able to see the Forbesy, who's not a football fan at all, is got the red and blue of the local football side. So that's a nice touch. He's not interested in football at all. Thinks it's overrated and will never catch on. Yeah, no. Exactly. So sadly, then maybe talk to us about his Blair Mayne's sad death at the age of only 40. Just briefly, we mentioned the Masonic earlier on there.
Yep.
Are you enjoying yourself?
Not really.
And this didn't happen in rehearsals.
Nope.
So he was at a Masonic meeting in Bangor.
Yes.
And he was driving this very distinctive car. That's kind of important. A red Riley sports car.
Sports car. Yeah, 2.5 litre.
Which was a bit of it's fairly unique, I would have thought, in the town of Ards here.
Yes.
But so everybody knew when they saw this red Riley Roadster that it was Blair Mayne driving. That's kind of important. So he had a few drinks. It's not controversial to
say. Possibly.
And then did he come back to Ards?
Yes, he was heading back to home. And it wasn't very far from home, a matter of about 300-400 yards. We reckon he probably fell asleep at the wheel.
Okay.
Turned round a corner to head up to his house and up the Scrabble Road and Mill Street. And instead of straightening the car out or straightening the steering out, we reckon he dozed off and basically just kept on turning to the right-hand side and collided with a lorry that had been parked there perfectly fine. The lorry was always parked by the guy who owned it, pointing towards Newtonards. So Blair's car hit the front of the lorry and glanced off it and catapulted the car across the road, where it embedded in stuck between a house and a telegraph pole.
Now, there's a perception in the town of Ards here, and I know that having worked here as a student, that because this distinctive Fred Riley sports car, as I mentioned briefly there a few minutes ago, everybody knew it was Blair's car. So everybody was terrified of Blair. Blair had a reputation of, especially when he had a drink on board, of being confrontational, let's say. So maybe terrified is not the right word, but so there's a perception in Ards, and this is what I heard initially, but it's in fact incorrect, that people were too scared to approach Blair, and then he was perhaps trapped in the vehicle and then died. So the perception was that if he hadn't such a fearsome reputation, then he might have been saved. That's actually incorrect, isn't it?
Yes. It's basically a fractured skull was what killed him, and the thing was when they found the body and they took him out of the body, or took the body out of the car. He was straight into the hospital because it was right beside where the hospital is, Ards Hospital. So they were able to declare his death very quickly, because he was killed on the Wednesday and buried on the Friday, which is what we do in this country.
Yeah, we don't hang around too long.
No.
So yes, so the perception was that there's nothing could have been done anyway. No. It's a misconception, sorry. Yeah. So the funeral itself, from Mount Pleasant up to this very location, then was a huge event. Yeah. There's a number of great images that we have. Sadly, it would have passed the crash scene, wouldn't it? I would think. Yeah, on the way up to Ards here. I'm looking at my notes, which are swiftly turning into a big pile of mush. Just briefly, I suppose it's not in chronological order, but so as I mentioned, Blair had a bit of a reputation around the town, and he did have these days we would say he was suffering from PTSD. You couldn't, arguably, you could not go through what he would have witnessed during the Second World War and not have some element of PTSD, which wouldn't have been as recognised in those days. So he sought solace in drink, as I think was quite common in a lot of his colleagues, sadly, so he would have had a reputation here in the town of Ards of kind of going and wrecking bars. One of them was called Peter McCabe's, nothing to do with me, and he had her. And so maybe tell us about how the police encountered Blair Mayne on occasion and how they calmed him down.
Well, Blair would have drunk for various different reasons. I always say there's about three reasons. One was it quelled the PTSD. Another was he had this pain, this back pain, and didn't have medication or anything like that. So
he was harnessed, wasn't he? He had a harness, and he just broke it off.
At one point, yes, they put a cast on him, and he cut it off with a set of garden shears. That was strength of the man. But yes, the third reason is he liked to drink, and yes, and sometimes did go a wee bit over the top, and it brought out a slightly different nature from this quiet, unassuming, shy man, yet. So
the new police officer in town?
Yes, on one occasion there was the police station in Newtonards got a phone call to say that there was a bit of a fracas going on, and Blair was involved. The young rookie cop who was there, two police on at the time. The young rookie cop took the phone call and said, "Yes, we'll be with you in 2 minutes." And and he said to the desk sergeant, "There's a fight at one of the pubs, and the name they said was Mayne." And at which stage the desk sergeant, who knew the story, said, "What was that name again?" He said, "Mayne." Says, "Oh, we'll need more men."
Okay,
So,
and how did he calm him down then? How did the police calm him down usually?
they realized very quickly that you couldn't jump this man, because
He'd
he could
knock you in the
take out
next
about,
week.
well, he'd
Yeah.
take about 8 of them out. But if you talk to him like a gentleman, because you got to remember, this was a man who was the secretary of the Law Society of Northern Ireland. He was well spoken. He had a great education, not as depicted on various TV programs.
We'll mention that shortly. Yeah.
Don't start me. But anyway, but yes, if you spoke to him and said, "Mr. Mayne, would you mind setting that man down?" Then most of the time Blair actually did that. But if on an occasion where he didn't give in straight away, they would use their secret weapon, and they would say, "Look, I'll tell your mum." So Blair loved and respected his mum.
As we all do.
The
Yeah.
whole the whole family did. She brought up 7 kids, and Blair was hard feared that his mum would ever find out that he had drink on him. So he never swore in front of his mum. Otherwise, he would just take you out of the scene very quickly. So yes, yeah.
And just briefly, as it becomes positively balmy here in the tropical Newtonards, just briefly mention an incident on a bus with
Yes.
Blair.
Blair was getting the bus into Belfast one day, and he was chatting away to a young lady at the bus stop, and there's a couple of wee sort of hallions. That's
a local term.
Yes, were mucking about. There was one seat in the bus, because the bus conductor, when the bus arrived, said there's one seat up top, and Blair assumed that the young girl would get the seat, and they got on the bus, but the wee hallions got past them and got up and took the seat. But the bus drove off, and about 400 yards up, they decided to leave the bus.
Perhaps involuntarily?
Yes, but with a small assist from a very large hand. And guess what? The young girl got the seat after all.
Gotta love a happy ending.
You got it.
So after Blair's sad death at the age of only 40, then he's commemorated at a number of locations around the town here. So they're relatively modern commemorations. There's the statue, which is as you perhaps alluded to earlier, is close to the family home, the original family home. Sorry, his Blair's birthplace, also to where he was schooled. So that's there. But also near Mount Pleasant, the family home off Scarborough Road, then, which is much altered, sadly, since the time when the Maynes lived there nowadays, but at least it still exists. There's Blair Main Road, so in front of what'll always be Wilco to me, now our shopping centre. But also then we have the leisure centre here in the town of Ards. So the leisure centre swimming pool used to be in William Street, but now it's over closer to Regent Street. So Regent School. So the current location. So it's great that he's remembered still in the town here, but he's also remembered. Interest has become has increased relatively recently due to the Rogue Heroes TV program. So maybe I want to mention keeping it clean. Maybe about your perhaps issues with Blair and how he's portrayed there. You've already mentioned that he wasn't a swearer, so he didn't swear that much, especially in front of his mum. So my perception is, and having never watched the program, is on a TV, that he's portrayed in that as a fairly small, foul-mouthed homosexual. Would be my kind of perception of it. So what would be your edited comments on that?
Yes. Well, when the people who produced the TV program, kudos, wrote out to the families, we had a fair idea that they would be buying into various rumors about Blair, and rumors that were completely unsubstantiated. And we offered to help them and assist them, and were told that they had all the information that they needed. And then they produced that TV program where they had the man swearing, and yes, there were just, I find it difficult to watch, as many people in this country did, because we know the truth. But yeah,
It was sensationalized. Is that
totally,
would that be
and
perhaps correct?
just abysmally uh, done. It really is awful, and they're making a third series of it, so it's obviously very successful. But yeah, they don't have too many folk who know Blair and know the family and things really buying into it at all.
Well, I suppose from your point of view, it has certainly heightened interest in Blair locally, and I suppose in around the UK. But I suppose it gives you an opportunity to perhaps correct,
Yeah.
and myth bust to a degree, because and tell
Yeah.
people what Blair was actually like, rather than the character represented in that program.
The family were very kind and kindly donated the contents of Blair's war trunk to a local museum,
Yeah.
4 Years Remembered, and they have been researching thoroughly all the documents inside there, and the comment about homosexuality is just completely unfounded. We have so much evidence to the contrary that he had female company. He just was a big, shy man, and this is what people don't realize.
I think the perception is, if you're close to your mother,
Yes.
and you're
Yeah.
not married, then
Yeah.
that must mean that you're.
Bear in mind, he was 40 years of age when he died.
Yeah.
He would have made a fantastic father, and but anyway, we'll not dwell on that.
So just as a draw to a close here, you'd mentioned the fantastic local museum that it'll be opening
4 Years
in the
Remembered
town
Museum.
here. Yes. So it was originally in Ballyclare,
Yeah.
but then it's relocated to here, and they have a lot of fantastic stuff. They're not open to the public, sadly yet, but a lot of your talks is to raise awareness of and money for Davy and the folks at War Years Remembered. So,
Very much.
what's the connection with well, maybe it's obvious. There's always a connection to ours and Warriors Remembered. So, what's the connection with Blair Mayne? And you mentioned it earlier, the medals, etc.
Yes, we the family have been very generous and given the contents of Blair's war chest to the museum. But also we have the museum has recently managed to get back the full-size medals to accompany the other medals, which we want them to be obviously on display here for everyone to see, and the family want it to be on display, and we need to raise as much money as possible. And if you are visiting Newtownards, certainly War Years would be at top of the list, but also take a wee walk round to the library, where there is a copy of the SAS War Diary. Probably the only place on the face of the earth that you can just walk in off the streets and have a look at it.
Well, I was going to finish with the War Diary, as you've kind of beat me to it.
Sorry,
It's the story of my life, but
I'm just wrestling with the umbrella.
Was it really? So yes, what is the War Diary? It sounds like a stupid question, but if people haven't heard about it, what is it?
The War Diary is basically
The SAS War Diary.
The SAS War Diary is what started all this with me. It started my quest to find out more about Blair, because it turned out when I was talking to the kids in the school that I was teaching in, one of them was the great grandson of Billy Hull. The more I looked into it, the more I found out about this thing called the War Diary. There wasn't a copy in Newtownards. We raised the money to buy a copy. It's £1,000 to buy the copy. And then we handed it over to the to the library to look after, and it's been there for ages. It is a scrapbook made by one of the SAS guys at the end of the war, just to basically chronicle all their escapades, one would say, because of course the SAS was disbanded at the end of the war.
So it's a priceless resource in the town of Ards here, which a lot of people, local people, don't know about, but also people from.
It's a copy of the original. The original lives with the SAS Regimental Association.
So you can come down here. If the library's open, it's not open 24. Oh, it's not open 9 to 5 every day, but check the opening times. Come down, have a look at the war diary. Go and visit the statue. Go to Colonel Paddy's there at the square. There's some SAS Blair Mayne stuff in there as well. Say when Warriors Remembered opens, definitely worth a visit. And also you can have a tea in the Regent tea room where Blair
or do the tour
as well.
Contact me about doing the tour.
Yeah, so how do people contact you then?
By
carrier pigeon,
probably.
I think the easiest way is to just click on the link above, link in bio, and if you email Peter, Peter are forwarded to Peter.
Thank you, sir.
It gets a bit confusing, this.
Yep.
Are you hearing voices?
I am.
So, yes.
We're in a graveyard.
Thanks, Forbesy, for your time today in these beautiful weather conditions. Thanks very much for doing it for us. Again, I can't urge enough I would encourage you to invite Forbesy along to talk to any groups that you would be associated with throughout Northern Ireland and even beyond. He normally does it for a donation and a part donation as well to Warriors Remembered. So, as well as informing yourself about Blair Mayne, his remarkable life, then you're also supporting. You're also trying to keep you in the matter to which you're accustomed, and also making a donation to Warriors Remembered. So thanks very much for tuning in. As I say, this is out on Peter McKay's Memorable Memorials YouTube channel. If you would be kind enough to have a look at the channel, like the channel and subscribe to it for free, that would be appreciated. So, and again, thanks to Justin for all the voices in the background, and for battling through the gremlins and the weather and having to listen to us too for speaking to you. So thank you again, Forbesy.
Thank you, sir.
Over and out.